Okay, picking up from where we left off in the last clip, we're ready now to generate our business class. And I've changed this recently. I'm doing it different in newer features than I did in previous times. So I have this business class stubber here, which was the one I used for a long time. It created, the kind of classic object-oriented approach with a constructor where you pass in the ID to the constructor and get your object. But over time, I've kind of seen some of the downside of that, because if you pass in a bad ID, you've still got an object, when it might be better to just, return null. I'm switching now to this repository pattern, which should also help us going forward with trying to do some things like dependency inject. So basically there are two templates related, and that's the business class stubber for repository and then the repository stubber itself. We'll start with the business class stubber here for repository. And again, we have to tell it what our table prefix is and what our business or data layer namespace is in our business layer namespace, and then we'll point it at our table, and then we can pretty much copy this thing. And when we're using this repository pattern, the business object itself doesn't do the data access internally like we have done in our kind of classic OOP style. So we paste that in. And so it's, right now it's almost like a struct, just has properties. It doesn't really have methods or anything like that. So we're going to need a guestbook repository class in addition to our guestbook class. So here in the business project, I just add a new class. Guestbook repository, and then I go back to CodeSmith and I open up the business repository stubber template, and again I set my table prefix, I set my data namespace, my business namespace, and I choose my table and generate. And we'll just pretty much copy the whole thing, and we'll chop out the pieces we're not using yet. And so let's see what we've got here. So save, you pass in the guestbook in the repository, saves it. So we've got this else update, and it's checking basically, does it have a GUID or not? If it's empty GUID, it knows it needs to create it. For now, we're just going to comment out this update because we're not using it. I'm not sure if we will use it. I like to format things a little better than what the generator does sometimes, make it easier to read. And again, remember that we also added a delete by module, so we'll add that to our repository, and we'll change it to module GUID. We'll make that plural. Which we call the right data layer method. Now we haven't implemented count yet, so we'll just comment that out. And here we want to pass in the module GUID. And that should make it happy. And then we didn't implement paging yet, so we will comment that out. And now we should be able to compile our business class. And yes, it compiles. So you can see we've got quite a jump start with just a few minutes using code generation. So it's a really good tool to jumpstart development and get you productive. Like I said, I don't treat it as a turnkey solution. I review the code generated and make sure it makes sense to me as if you wrote it yourself. We build now because we have methods in the business class that refer to the data class, and when the business class builds, the DLLs will be pulled down by its dependency on that. So the web depends on the business. It all, through the build process, resolves all the dependencies, so we get all the DLLs, and now that means that after building, that DLL will be in the bin folder of our guestbook project, which we can't see right now because we don't have it showing all files, but it will land in here, and so we're ready now to start using the business layer from the UI. Okay, we've got time, I believe. We'll stub out the form for our users to post to the guestbook, and I've even got a template to do that. Table to edit form. And again, you basically, now let's see, we got to tell this one a resource file, so we're going to say guestbook resources. And we're going to say acme.business. And we choose our table. And it just stubs out some UI code that we can use for our form. And you know, this is going to have to be edited. It's not perfectly how I want it, but hey, it saves us some typing. We'll just get started with this. We'll replace our previous stuff with this, and also generated some code for us here that we'll want in our UI maybe. And now this code is assuming we're going to want to populate this form from an existing guestbook entry. So we won't use all of that code, but we'll go back to our code behind here, and we will put using acme.business, and we don't really have this one, and we'll copy the save method, should be about right. Of course, we'll have to call that from a click event. And actually, this code needs to be, this is not really using the repository pattern. With a new one like this, basically we'll create it like that, and we already have a module ID, and the module good doesn't come from a text box either. And the created date doesn't need to come from a text box. We just put datetime.utc now. And then I've got some code somewhere. Let's see. Site utils.get IP forward address. Yeah. And so then it would be, we'll want to have a guestbook repository. We'll go ahead and put this as a private variable. And then when we save, we just go repository.save, and we pass in our guestbook. Now, we haven't hooked this up to a button yet. I'm not sure I can get to that in this clip. How much time have I got? Yeah, we're getting close. But let us build, and let us look at the page. Assuming the web server has it. So, okay, we haven't defined the resources for our labels, but we can see we've got some text boxes on the screen. We'll pick up and correct these issues in the next clip.